There we go. Okay, so let's first start with a note on adaptive design. So Kinetic and Application Studio is based on the idea of adaptive design, which is that even if you set widths, lengths, all sorts of things, boxes to be in a certain alignment, certain position, Kinetic will adjust based on the user's window size, so based on pixel size. So you can see here how I'm resizing a canned form, the sales order form. I had put on there, let me play it again for you. I put on there some formatting adjustments, but as the window size changes, you can see fields, panels, all sorts of things change their size. So you're going to be fighting a little bit against this adaptive design and how Epicor thinks that things should be resized as the window size changes. Now, we will be talking on a later date about specific UI devices, so like tablets, things of that nature, how to access Application Studio using those and how to format things in a way that is probably better for different devices. So if you're using like a tablet and something like that, we'll talk about that additional on another session. So leave those questions for when we do those specific UI device presentation. All right, let's talk about your layout adjustment options in Application Studio. So you're going to start with your application map, and we already talked about navigating in Application Studio. So your application map is when you go into Application Studio, it's all those different pages. So we're going to talk about page types and organization. We're going to talk about panel cards and the full screen option, which they also call virtual pages. So if you ever hear virtual pages, it's essentially the same as the full screen option on a panel card. We're going to talk about some of the flex layout properties, how they work, how to work with them. And then we'll talk about some nesting container types, and in those we'll talk about orientation and why that's important. And then we'll go into alignment, which is on various different components. There's about, I think, 52 or 54 different component types. So there's going to be different properties for layout based on what component type you're going to have, but a lot of them will have these things of alignment and orientation. So it'll essentially work pretty much the same based on all the different ones. So it's like horizontal, all those kind of things. So let's first talk about this application map. So you've seen this before. This is when you go into Application Studio, you're going to see all of these little squares, and these are all called pages. So based on those pages and where they are in the map, it's either going to be a parent or a child, and then the page is going to have a different type. We're going to talk about that in a second. On default, every page size is 1440 pixels. So when I say 1440 pixels, that's the width of the window that you're looking at that application using. 1440 might not be the perfect size for whatever you're utilizing. So keep that in mind, that it starts off at 1440, and that's what the adaptive design is based off of when you're going to create new pages, change pages, things of that nature. You can also adjust that page size. You can find it right here. So you have to go to the topmost element of that page, and it'll give you your page information. You can see that it says page details here, and then you'll see your width right here. So at that top is going to be your application landing page. Each of these forms alone is going to be called an application. So sales order is going to be an application. Customer entry is going to be an application. So your first node on this map is going to be called your landing page. That's where your user is going to find themselves once they open up the application. The next is going to be a tab. So you can see here, this is orders is a tab. You can see that label orders is here when you open up your application. So you can go edit right here, and it'll take you to editing that form, and you can see the name of that form here. Now, for this one, because it's a tab, it's going to have a tab strip. Every tab has to have a tab strip. You can see that in that tab strip, if you go to data, which is here, and then under here, this drop down, you're going to see all of the tab pages that are in that tab strip. So what is here, Activity Explorer details, are actually underneath order. So you'll see that activity sales order, and I junked it off, but it will be Explorer as well. So if you add a page, a tab page to this tab strip, you need to additionally, or to this tab, you need to additionally add it to your tab strip, or it will not show up on your form. Next down, your page type is tab page. So as you create a new page, you want to make that page type tab page, and you'll see any additional ones that you add in to that tab strip in this node. You'll see it show under these clickable tabs underneath that order. So as you pick an order, go into it, this is the options you'll see. So you can see that this one is bolded, and when you open up an order, the order header details is what shows. So that's the default of what opens when this orders tab loads. To choose which page is going to default, you're going to go to that drop down, so whatever one that is. For this one, it's details, and you're going to click this selected button. That'll change what default opens when you load that form in. So let's move on. So underneath those tab pages, so you have sales order here, we can additionally have virtual pages. So you can see that, virtual pages. So virtual pages are simply, they're panel cards with a full screen option put onto them. So if you add a panel card and do the full screen option, which we'll show in a little bit, it's going to show up on this node as a child. And you can see here, you can change the parent of this page, and it can move around. It can move around nodes in the map and be put in a different place. Full screen. So if you want that full screen option, and let me play that for you. So you can see that it only has this much information, and then you click on full screen, and now look at all that information you have available to you. So that's what full screen does. It allows you to add just your most important information, and then the full screen expands on additional info if the user wants it. So it's a clickable to expand essentially. Now it's available on any panel card and panel card grid. There's a couple different panel card component types, which we've talked about when we talked about components. So you can do it on any of those options. You can display additional grids or data, which I showed in that video, based on putting it in the other element, which I'll show you in a second. And then, so on panel card grids, the full screen property default is enabled because they're expecting that your grid is going to have more data than just a typical panel card. So if you don't want it to have that additional data, you can shrink it up by unenabling it. And then on a panel card, the default property is disabled, so you're going to have to enable it if you add a panel card and you want that option. Well, how do we do this, and what is it? So how to enable it, this is a panel card. If you haven't seen it before, it's going to have this little arrow with a little title, and then some panel cards will have this little header element, some won't, and then it'll have a body. So when you go into properties, you want to go into advanced and then enable for full screen. Now, if you watch this video that I created, when you have that, this is in developer mode. You can tell that by all of the little dotted lines, and I have a lot more options than if you were just accessing the form. So you can see here that in your design screen, when you enable full screen, it'll give you this little button. In your design, you want to open up that second area, because it'll give you two areas. So see how there's 1, 2 here. So anything you want hidden, if the person is not using the full screen button, you put in the second box. That information will be hidden from the user unless they click on that full screen mode. I'll show you that one more time. So you have one box here, enable full screen option, second box right here. Everything you want to hide, unless they have that full screen option, you put in that second box. Also, be careful if you're doing a panel card stack, that does not work with the full screen option. Okay, flex layout. This is our next fun thing. So as I told you before about adaptive design, the screen will try and resize. So if you put in pixel sizes, which often doesn't work on a lot of the components, so there might be like a pixel width option that you can type in, you'll find often it doesn't work on a lot of things, and it's because of this adaptive design. So what helps is instead using the flex layout. So if you know how wide your page size is and how much of that 1440 pixels you are going to allow an element to use, you instead use a %. So on this one, you want to enable, it's a property that you enable either on a page, on a group box, or on a panel card. So essentially what you're doing is going to that component or that page, and you're saying, hey, allow flex layout, and then these little percentages, this minimum option will show up for you. I have found though, on canned reports, you don't even have to put the flex option, the flex layout as an option on pages, it seems to already just be enabled. At the page level, you will have to do it at the component level. So you will have to do it at the panel level as well if you want additional minimums, or at the group box component level. So what these do is say, hey, I'm going to go to properties. I say I want 50% of the width taken up by this group box within this one. So I have 2 group box levels here. I have a group box here, and then I have 2 group boxes within it. I set the flex layout at this group box level, and then it gives me options of how much of this group box width I want taken up by this. So it's going to be 50% of this one's at 100. So the parent group box is at 100% of the page width. And so each of these are going to take 50% of that 100%. So as you resize, it should take 50% of whatever you're resizing to. With group box, you do have to note a direction on it, which I believe I have in the next slide. Okay, so on here you can see this is where you find that property. So I have selected on this example the panel card, and I have chosen flex layout. So this, if I'm on the panel card right here, this one, this is using 100% of the page's flex layout. But if I want the things inside of it to additionally have a flex layout, you select this little property right here under layout, or under your panel card. And then I can choose 50%, 50%, and you can see each of them take up 50%. Okay, so with group box, you are going to have to determine the direction that you want. So unlike panel card, which is just going to be side by side, with the group box, you can do it by a row, which is going to be side by side, or by a column, which is going to be stacked one on top of each other. And under here, you can choose the flex direction. So if you see here, this is your group box, here's your layout, and then you can choose. All right. So next we'll talk about column containers. So a column container is another type of component we had discussed before. I think this one was a second level component encapsulation type. So it has to be within a group box or a panel, but it can nest other components inside of it. So in this case, there are 2 kinds of column containers. There's a 1 column and a 2 column, which is a bit of a misnomer because the 2 column is just a many column. So with the 2 column, you can choose a great number of columns in it. So on this one, I chose 3. You could just change that column's number to how many columns you want. So it could be 4, 5, 6, whatever you want. And then your orientation you choose as well. So you can choose vertical or horizontal. So this one right now is vertical, which means they're going to be stacked on top of each other. If I chose horizontal for this column, it would be right next to each other. So you can see that vertical stacked on top, horizontal side by side. So additionally, within that column, you have more choices. See, once again, we have just the percentages on this one, and we don't have to choose flex layout to get that. That just comes with the column. So the column is also adaptive. It's going to give you how much space you choose as you move this little boundary around. So you can see this one, as I change it, you can see it's 60%, 40%, 50%, so it changes. You can choose how much of that screen pixel size that you want each column to be able to use. All right, and then alignment. So alignment you're going to find on a lot of your components, and that is essentially how is it going to align with the element that's on top of it. And then, so you can see here, and this is not going to be just the text in the box. This is going to be the box itself. So if you watch, this one is right aligned, this one is center aligned, and this one is left aligned. And as you click it, see how it pulls in on both sides to be a centering. That one's going to go right aligned, and then this one is left aligned, which isn't even going to pull in at all. And so that kind of looks wacky. You really don't want to have, this is a column, so you don't want to have items in a column differently aligned. It's going to look strange. I wouldn't recommend it. So instead, you want to really make sure that they're all aligned in the same direction. So you want to make sure that they're all aligned in the same direction so that when the user sees them, when it's resized, and when they click inside, they all have the same behaviors, just a little bit more professional looking. By the way, just so you know that width doesn't always work, I set all of these ones here to 50, didn't really do anything. So sometimes those width pixel amounts just don't do much. And it's mostly because of that adaptive design element. I believe that was all I had. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
When would you want to use 2 flex group boxes at 50% instead of just using 2 column?
So flex group boxes are going to pop out. So if you have 2 flex group boxes at 50%, if your adaptive design changes, it's going to go underneath each other. The 2 column will stay together on a smaller screen. So it'll just get as small as it possibly can. So if you are afraid that that information isn't popping down if the UI isn't big enough, I would adjust my design to that usage.
I hope everyone has a great afternoon, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, everyone.